Hello, lovely people. It's only been a few days since Christmas, but it feels like ages. It's the 29th. It's Sunday. It's late afternoon and it's getting dark outside. But I'm ready for a proper vlog again. Vlogmas is great and all, but time's limited when you're trying to upload a video every day. And also material can be a bit limited as well. Because not every day is exciting. And you don't always do any crafty stuff or do anything worth talking about, really. Sometimes it's just get up, go to work, crash out at the end of the day and go to bed. Anyway, hi, I'm Nicola. This is Stitches and Slapdashery. This is the little corner of my sewing room that I set up with a little armchair recently, so I can sit comfortably and talk to you. Which is rather ironic considering I set up a nice little backdrop of my cubbies over there with the yarn in and everything else that's looking nice over there. And now I'm using this wall covered in fabric as my backdrop, at least for now. But I tend to move around my sewing room. And sometimes I don't really care if it doesn't look pretty in the background. Sometimes it's just a work in progress, you know what I mean? Well, I have been crocheting up a storm since I last talked to you. I have also been doing a bunch of papercraft, bit of painting, bit of sticking, and having a bit of fun with that, and a little bit of reading. Started a new book. First, I wanted to start with just a little bit of a review. I'm not going to go on and on for a long time about this, but I wrote a few things in my December journal that were highlights of 2024. All I did was have a look through the thumbnails of all the vlogs I have published this year and hope that that was going to prompt my memory sufficiently. So what did I write down? Let's find the right page for starters. So we'll do it sort of chronologically, but as I say, I'm not going to go on ad infinitum about this. If you were with me for all of this, thank you for being here again. If not, you can always go back and watch the stuff, but you can just start right here. We can just start getting to know each other from today. So let's see. Vlog 17 was the first video of my year. I started vlogging in June 2023. So I've only been at this thing for 18 months, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. The Vlog 17 was the first one this year. At the time, Mr. Stitches, my husband, had had a diagnosis of throat cancer. So the first half of the year was definitely revolving a lot around that. I wasn't working at the time. I decided not to seek another job because I wanted to be around to basically wait on him hand and foot while he went through his treatment. So that was for 7 weeks. So January, February, March were the most intense periods. And then the next 3 months was a waiting game until we found out whether he was clear or not. And he was. So that's good news. Did quite a bit of crocheting of small random little things while I was sitting around in the waiting room for him. Did a lot of sewing. Decided that I was going to do a farmers and crafters market in the summer, which meant I sewed and I sewed and I sewed. And I kind of burnt myself out. I used to be so nuts about bag making. And you know what? Since I had to sew so much inventory for the market, I barely made a thing. I've done other sewing, but I have barely made a bag. I will definitely get back into it though, because I have quite a bit of fabric, especially quilt cottons. So I'm definitely going to be doing more sewing with that. And I also want to learn how to use my secondhand serger that I acquired recently. So that's going to be a bit of a fun journey as well in 2025. And now I am deviating from what I wrote here already. In February, I got my braces off. I had braces on for 20 months. It's something I've always wanted to do. When my sister and I were kids, like teens, we both had pretty crooked teeth, and the dentist had a look at them both and decided that my sister's teeth needed the work more than mine did. And so because my parents weren't made of money, I mean, they were pretty middle class, but they weren't made of money, and they had to basically pick which one of us was going to get the braces, and it was my sister. And it wasn't an issue for a long time. And then when we came to Canada from Britain, of course, so many people here have had their teeth straightened. You know, it's an old cliche, isn't it, about British teeth looking terrible and American teeth looking all white and perfect. And so I guess my self-consciousness grew when we moved here. And in the end, thanks to a bit of money coming from my mum, I decided the time was right, and I splurged on getting my teeth straightened, and I'm really glad I did. Haven't regretted that. So the braces came off in February, and obviously ever since then I've had to wear nighttime retainers. After all, they spent about 60 years. Well, obviously I didn't have my adult teeth for the first 10 years of my life, but all right, they spent about 50 years in a certain position, and of course they probably want to move back there if I decide not to wear the retainers. So, you know, I have to be careful about that, because there's no point undoing all that good work, is there? In vlog 25, I did a giveaway. I hit 500 subscribers, which was really, really exciting. Doesn't sound a lot, but you know, when you're a tiny little channel who's not very well known, it's a big deal. So that was fun. I published a few tutorials this year. Having seen how popular the tutorials are compared to just a regular vlog, makes me think I should probably do more. But I don't like to force it. I like to come across the idea for a tutorial organically rather than say, okay, I must make a tutorial because it'll get the likes and the views. No, I want to do it just because, hey, this is something I designed and I'd like to share it with you. So who knows if there'll be more in 2025? Probably will. Don't know what they'll be yet. I think one of my most epic projects of the year has to be the granny square trousers or pants, depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on. That was vlog number 34 when I revealed the finished project. Yeah, those were awesome. I had tried to, well, I did make some granny squares out of some stash yarn. And I even started sewing them together. And then I thought, oh, these are just coming out so ugly. I mean, deliberately ugly or cute ugly is fine, but these are just ugly, ugly. In the end, I made granny squares out of a completely different yarn, and I actually followed a pattern from Red Heart. They have it on their yarnspirations.com website, free pattern, and they came out awesome. It hasn't been cold enough here to wear them this winter, but I think in about 10 days' time, we might be going into minus double digits, so maybe that will be the time. I probably tidied my sewing room about 100 times this year. I think I started a lot of vlogs with had to blitz my sewing room or had to tidy off my sewing table in order to get this project worked on. But you know what? I love to do it because it reminds me where everything is. It reminds me what I have. I sometimes get to clear out something which I've had for a long time, which I don't really feel the need to keep anymore. And it's inspiring because I see, oh, I've got that yarn or I've got that fabric. I've got an idea for that, and then I know to make something with it instead of just leave it sitting around. After Mr. Stitches got the all clear in June, I think it was, he went back to work, and I figured it was time for me to start looking for a job. I did in-home care for about a month, which was a very new thing for me, and I thought I could do it. Turns out it wasn't for me for so many reasons. And so that lasted a whole month. And then I put my resume out to a few places and I ended up getting accepted at Michael's. Now, it's a bit of a drive to Michael's from my house, but it's been fun. All of that crafty stuff can be dangerous working in a place where you want to buy half the products that they sell. And I've been fairly self-disciplined. I have bought a few art supplies and a little bit of yarn. We'll talk about the yarn in a minute. But on the whole, I've been very self-disciplined and I've learned a lot, because as customers ask me questions about different things, I'm like, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know we stocked that. What do you use that for? You know, it's been quite fun and educational working there. And it's part-time, so I still have lots of time for my crafting, which of course I have to do for my sanity, as one does. In September, I ran my first make-along. I did the Slapdash Colour Mal 2024, and the idea was that we would make something that would keep our laps cozy as we went into winter. It could be something big like a blanket or a coat or a sweater, something sizable, something colourful. That's the important thing. You'll see if you stay here for any length of time that I like colour. And I made the Technicolor Dream Coat by Earth Tricks, and that took me almost the full 3 months of the mal, because I was obviously working on other things as well during that time. Also, I had a holiday out of the country during that time when I couldn't work on it because it was a couch project. It wasn't a portable project. It was a little bit of a struggle in places, but I'm really glad I made it, and it's very cozy. I haven't worn it out of the house yet, but I will. October was Vlogtober, of course. I did Vlogtober last year and I did it again this year, and that was fun. And that incorporated the aforementioned holiday when I went over with Mr. Stitches to visit family on the other side of the ocean. And we had a really good time. Unfortunately, it was only for a week, which wasn't long enough, but we both had jobs and decided that a week was better than nothing. December came around with a Vlogmas, of course, and that just finished on Christmas Day, which was just a few days ago. So that's the highlight of my year. My Vlogmas projects, I'm so pleased I got my Vlogmas projects done. I had plans to crochet a red and green cowl, and I also managed to make some matching fingerless mitts. So that got finished. I had a Christmas quilt I wanted to make, and that got finished on Christmas Day. And the cross stitch of the little tree also was finished and is currently sitting on my Christmas tree until we take it down in January. It feels so good to have finished projects. I am definitely a product crafter. I like finishing things. I have a couple of languishing knitting or crochet projects, and they annoy me. I'm not one of these people who can put up with 30 unfinished objects sitting around my house. I like to finish stuff, use it or give it away or wear it, and makes me antsy to have them sitting in project bags for a long time. There's one I think I'm going to have to frog because it's been sitting around for far too long. But that's a thing for another day. As for the coming year, I'll think about that later. We'll talk about that later. This vlog is all about this year and what I'm doing right now. So let's move on to what I've been doing in the last few days. I have a really big bag of Lion Brand Heartland. Some of it's left over from, I can't even remember what the first project was. I know I knitted or crocheted a pink hat and cowl that I gave away. And I had a few other balls of Lion Brand Heartland, in different colors. And then I decided to make Mr. Stitches a cancer treatment scarf, which is a bit like a temperature blanket, but for his treatment process and progress. And it was a knitted tube scarf. And so I bought extra colors for that in some beautiful shades. And I had quite a lot of that left by the time it was finished. So I needed to make a sweater. This yarn was calling out to be a sweater. Didn't know whether I was going to knit or crochet it. In the end, I decided to do a crochet one, a top-down granny stitch crochet one called the Faraway Jumper by Iron Lamb. It was a paid pattern. It was £5, and I can't remember what that was in Canadian dollars. Maybe 9 something in Canadian dollars on Ravelry. So I've been working on it every day. Now, I must confess something here. I bought a little bit more of the Heartland. Now, the idea of this sweater was to use up what I had. You know how that works, right? So I ended up, because it was on sale at Michael's and I get my staff discount, I bought 2 colors of one called Glacia Bay, which was a sort of turquoisey blue. And I got a black and a grey, just randomly. And I started on this sweater, thinking I would still be using up most of what I had in the bag already. But I started out with this lovely Glacia Bay, which is this one here. Let's see, does it have a color number? Color number is 105N. So this color wasn't in Mr. Stitch's scarf. This is one I bought 2 balls of on a whim one day, I think just before Christmas. And then I started the sweater with it. So when I saw how this sweater was coming out, I'm like, oh, I think I want to make sure that most of the background of this sweater is this color. But don't tell Mr. Stitches, but I bought 4 more balls of it. Unfortunately, the dye lots don't match, but I think it's going to be okay because I am going to incorporate probably some more colors in the body and also on the sleeves. Don't think you'll notice that they're different dye lots, she said confidently. So let's take a look. Oh, I am so happy with how this looks. Now let's see. I'll try not to rustle the microphone too much. If I put it over my head, you can see how the yoke's coming along. It's looking pretty big, but no, it's nowhere near big enough to meet under my armpits yet, so we're okay. Now, sorry about the microphone. Let's just look at it, admire it, and take it off again. Okay, so where were we? I swatched very briefly and minimalistically with a 4.5mm hook, a 5mm hook, and a 5.5. And I was quite surprised that I had to go up the hook in the hook size because the pattern is written for a DK yarn and a 4mm hook. And yet this stuff, which is supposedly a worsted weight yarn, I was getting gauge of the 4.5 granny clusters to 4 inches with a 5.5mm hook. And I didn't really want to use that size of a hook because it's quite a thin worsted weight. And I wanted the sweater to be fairly squishy and for it to not look too gappy, if you know what I mean. So I ended up using the 5mm. And I thought I'll go for the large, which is the size I think I should use if I'm getting gauge. And I'll just start it. So I did my foundation single crochet round and I tried it over my head and I thought that seems fine. And I just dove right in. So at the moment, I'm partway through the yoke and it's top down. So this is where I started. This is where you start with the neck. And a lot of the rows are just plain old granny stitch, but some of them have spike stitches in, which look really cool. And my colours, if you look at the pattern photo on Ravelry, you'll see that she's used white for these 3 rounds here, and brighter red and yellow for these things. So in a way, the red and yellow is similar to the pattern design, but I've used a rust or copper here. And I have a bunch more colours here. So what was the name? Let me just check the names of those colours. The Glacia Bay was the blue. Yeah. So Canyon is the gold color, and Redwood is the red, obviously, and Yosemite is the rust. And I have a purple and a green and a darker blue. The black and the grey were never going to make it into this anyway, so I'm ignoring those. But yes, I'm hoping that I won't have to buy more of this Glacia blue, because those 4 balls that are sitting over there, which is why I keep looking over there, those 4 balls that are sitting over there were everything that we had at work. So that would be a total of 6 balls of this color, plus whatever colors I end up doing as contrasts. This is quite heavy. It's squishy. Because of the spike stitches, there's quite a bit of overlap in the rounds, and it feels lovely and squishy. The only concern I have with this yarn, and I've not looked on Ravelry to see what the comments are on it, but it is quite soft, and I hope it's not too prone to pilling, because I don't want it to look like a rag after 2 wears. Back in November, when I made this journal here, and I made a couple of other booklets as well that I gave to friends, I said at the time that for some reason I only ever seemed to get into papercraft around Christmas time. And seeing as I have all these supplies, like paper and glue and pens and paint and all that, I'm like, why? It's fun. So when I was at my local library a while back, let me just grab this stuff. Oh, lots of little bits here. When I was at my local library not long ago, I picked up a bunch of bookmarks and a trifold pamphlet as well. And I thought, I should be able to turn these into something interesting. That would be something different to do, wouldn't it? I also had a Knit Picks catalogue through the mail. Sure, I've told them multiple times not to send me those, because if I want to see what they're selling, I can easily go to the website. But they are rather nice to leaf through. So this little leaflety thing, this trifold thing, was actually a Spinning and Weaving Guild leaflet. And I decided to cut a bunch of stuff out from the Knit Picks catalogue and glue it on the front. It's got a whole bunch of knitting pictures and yarn pictures and some words there that I happened to just stick together because it sounded good, dreamy knitting. This pattern was already on the leaflet, so I didn't have to do anything with that. I left it uncovered because I thought it was pretty. And then on the inside, I stuck a few more things. There's a little bit of a knitting swatch side, and then there's some other stockinette yarn swatches there. And I wrote some quotes in there. So one of the quotes says, "Properly practiced knitting soothes the troubled spirit, and it doesn't hurt the untroubled spirit either," which, if you know Elizabeth Zimmerman, you'll know that's one of her quotes. I also included a quote from Kate of The Last Homely House. "Get out of your head and into your hands," because I love that so much. Knitting is a way to create something beautiful and useful, and it's a way to calm the mind and soothe the soul. Unknown. Just found that online. And then this one as well. Knitting is a way to channel anxiety and stress into something positive and creative. So what I think I might do is I am going to give this to a friend, a knitting friend, obviously, with a knitting notebook that I've got that I've never used. So one of the other things I've done is upcycled, I guess you'd call it, upcycled a bunch of bookmarks, which was a lot of fun. Now I had to be patient with this, and if you know me at all, you'll know I'm not a very patient person. But because I was using gesso, I had to let that dry, although one of them I forgot to let it dry, and I glued something on top, and I thought, I probably shouldn't have done that. And also on some of them I painted them, and so again I had to be patient with that. So what I've done is a few different things. Let me see, I can't remember which was the first thing, so we're going to look at these at random. So this was a bookmark which just had a picture of a stegosaurus on it, and then just had the words stegosaurus on there. And on the back, there's a little bit of information about the stegosaurus. And then on the other side, there was a lot of blurb about the library, which I stuck a thing out, stuck a thing over, bits everywhere. I stuck a thing over that, and I wrote on there a couple of facts about stegosauruses, about the weight and the size of it, and the fact that the name was from stegos for roof and saurus for lizard in Greek. So I made a little book. I just cut some strips of paper, folded them, made some holes with my Lee Valley 4mm eyelet maker, put a ribbon through there. So it's a little notebook or sketchbook. Really simple. That probably was one of the quicker things that I made. This one was a fun bookmark that says, "Reading is awesome," and had this cute little dragon on it. And so on the other side, I did put gesso on it first, I think. Yes, I did. And then I added paint. So what I did, when I put the gesso on, I left "Reading is awesome" and these words here, which are imagination, laughter, and happiness. I left them uncovered. And then I added this green paint, covering up everything but the words. And then I added the blue paint, and I deliberately sort of dragged the paintbrush down and let the paint run out down here, and just cut this "Enjoy books" out of one of the other things I had picked up from the library. And so that's a really, really simple thing. I wondered about putting something on the blue, but I ended up not doing that. And so it's just a little arty flip book, or whatever you want to call it. This was just so much fun. I swear it's just like being a kid again when you do this. Let's see, what does this one say? So this was a bookmark that just said "craft time" and had some pictures of kids doing crafts on the front. I took this coloured thing from one of the other leaflets. It's got that lovely gradation of colour, and I glued it on there, and I just put "Feeling crafty." What did I put? "Maker's gonna make, creator's gonna create," and get out of your head and into your hands again. So again, another little itty bitty book. This one just said "Winter Story Time" on it, and it had a cute picture, or has a cute picture, of some penguins. I didn't do anything to the front of that one, but on the other side, I cut out some of the text from the Knit Picks catalogue and just used it side on, just to add an interesting background. And I also cut out the top half of this model's face with the hat on, and it says, "Once upon a time, there was snow and we needed yarn." Another stupid little winter book. That's the story, right? The idea was it was winter story time, shortest story ever. This one has a bit of a more serious note to it. So this bookmark was for National Ribbon Skirt Day. If you're not in Canada, you may not know anything about ribbon skirts, but when I worked at Fabricland, we'd get people coming in all the time to buy fabric and ribbons to make ribbon skirts. So it did explain in here how it came about, but I have gessoed over it. but they are worn in special ceremonies by the First Nations people here in Canada. And the day came to be after a child went into school and was shamed for wearing a ribbon skirt. And so now it's become a symbol for the First Nations people. It's become a symbol of identity. And what I decided to do after I had gessoed the inside of this was I drew a tree and a red dress. And again, if you don't know, if you're not in Canada, you probably won't know that the red dress is a symbol of missing and murdered Indigenous women, because a disproportionate amount of people who go missing in Canada are of Indigenous descent. So that one has a serious side to it. I feel like going to the library and showing them what I've done with these and saying they should have a little competition for different ways of using their bookmarks to make art, because I think they might like that. I think that would be cool. Guess what came in the mail today? Now, if you weren't here over Vlogmas, you probably won't have heard me talking about the shiwi. When we went for our anniversary retreat to another town, a couple of hours away, and we went for a walk in the woods one day, and then another day we were walking along a waterfront where there were no bathrooms, and at the time we decided to turn around and go back to our car. We had to use a handy tree for a quick whiz. And I was reminded that my friend has something called a shiwi, and she thinks they're great. And I was thinking of getting myself one. So I was buying a couple of things from Amazon anyway. I was buying the wooden snowflake buttons for my quilt, my Christmas quilt. And I was buying some tailor's chalk for sewing. And I threw this in my Amazon cart. So this is how it comes in a carrying case. It has this neat little case you can throw in your backpack when you go hiking, or just for a road trip or whatever. I decided on the Aqua. Comes in 10 colors. It was a toss-up between the Aqua and the fuchsia. You know, the Aqua won out, as it does. So this is what it looks like. It's basically a very narrow funnel, and it has an extension pipe. So no longer, ladies, do you have to be envious about men who can stand up to pee. Because now you have a gadget that means you can stand up to pee. I think they've been around a long time. This is the first time I have owned one. It's very narrow. They say that the best thing to do is to practice in the shower rather than try standing up to pee fully clothed the first time. So I'm rather looking forward to trying it out. It's not just for standing up in the woods to pee. It could also be if you're in a public washroom that's just really gross. Who knows? When we used to travel through France, of course, growing up in the Channel Islands over in Britain, we used to go over to France a lot because we were so close. It was a short hop on a small boat or a medium-sized boat. And always the French men have absolutely no embarrassment about just peeing at the side of the road. They'll just pull over, stand with their back to the traffic and pee, and it's quite accepted there. Well, now the women can do that too. That just reminds me, actually, during COVID times, if we ever left town and wanted to go on a road trip, it was maybe just a mini road trip, but it was still out of town, all of the public washrooms, like the ones at the rest stops at the side of the road, they were all closed. You had to be prepared. Should have had one of these then, shouldn't I? So there it is. Very exciting new acquisition. I may not I may not update you on how it goes, unless it's successful, in which case it'll be like, yay. We'll see. I think this is an and finally. And finally, I just started reading The Swindler's Daughter, and it's by Stephania H. McGee. Isn't that a great name? Stephania H. McGee. It's it opens with this woman. She and her mother are finding out that she has an inheritance from someone who was her dad, but they weren't. She and the mum weren't married. No, he and the mum weren't married. But she thought he was dead. Her mum's been telling her all these years that he's dead. It turns out he was in jail. And he's left her an inheritance set in 1912. That's where we are currently at the beginning of the book, 1912. And I've just read the first few pages. I took it out when we went for a cup of tea today. And we also had a little walk along the waterfront. I was seriously considering skipping the walk today because I wanted to come home and play with paper and talk to you guys. But we did end up going for a walk for about half an hour, which is probably a good thing. Settled down lunch and got me ready for some dinner later. I made fruitcake this morning. I did not end up making fruitcake on Christmas Day. I made some a little bit before, and then we got stuck into other things like nog cheesecake and mince pies. Oh man, that nog cheesecake was so good. And so I thought, I've got all this dried fruit in the cupboard still, so I'm going to make another fruit cake. This time, though, I subbed out the oil and I used applesauce instead. Still good. Still really good. Just a little less calorific. So I made that this morning. I also made some split pea soup and some focaccia, 2 massive loaves of focaccia. So dinner's ready. Anytime I want to go up there and heat some soup up and stuff my face with bread, it's ready. So that's nice. And I think I will be doing that very shortly. Well, I think that's pretty much it. I think we're all updated now. I think the next vlog will probably be New Year's Day, which is only a few days away, but that's my next day off. I'm working 4 mornings this week, but not Wednesday the 1st. I think probably I'll want to talk about what's coming up this year. I know I've said before, I'm not a planner. I'd love to be the sort of person who decides that, yeah, January we're doing this, February we're doing this, and I'm going to make this, and I'm going to do that. But you know what? Yeah, I'm a bit flighty. You know, it's just like right now I might think something is a perfectly good idea, but a few weeks down the road it'd be like, I don't want to do that now. I want to do something else. So I'm going to make very few concrete plans, but I'd like to give it some thought anyway. And I might tell you about that on Wednesday. Or I might just say to heck with it. It's going to be winging it all the way. That sounds like a song, doesn't it? So, my lovelies, hope your winter's going well. I hope you're enjoying this little crimbo limbo time in between Christmas and New Year, when none of us knows what the day of the week is. And we just really want to be hibernating and curling up with lots of snacks and nice drinks and that sort of thing. Don't know about you, but that's how I feel. I always feel crimbo limbo should be a time of definite hibernation when you don't have to leave the house if you don't want to. I'll see you again real soon. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your comments and your likes. Always love to see those. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.